find it too, like visually, but in the end, none of these methods helped her. As she grew closer to Howland Islands, they were meant to use voice communications at 3105 kilohertz during the night and at 6210 kilohertz during the day. But there were misunderstandings or some kind of error involved in this, as Earhart was using Greenwich Mean Time and the Itasca was using a naval time zone designation system. So they weren't on the same time. I don't know how that happens. Like when you're coordinating this, I
I
guess you just
know.
don't think of
Don't
it. I
think,
don't know.
yeah.
And also, like, she's the pilot, but like, I don't know how involved she was in coordinating all of this.
Right.
Like, she definitely had a team helping her as well coordinate stuff.
Yeah.
So somehow that got miscommunicated or whatever. But she also had an RDF beacon to find the Itasca, which the plane could listen for while rotating its loop antenna. And like a sharp minimum would indicate the direction of the RDF beacon, which she could then follow to find the Itasca. So like basically there's an antenna on the plane that circles around, and then when it gets the ping from Itasca, then there would
Yeah.
be a dip, and then she could start heading that way. But her RDF equipment had failed during an earlier leg of this flight, and it was replaced, which may not have been replaced correctly. And like she could hear the transmission from Itasca, but she could not determine a minimum. And this was at 7500 kilohertz. So like because she couldn't find the minimum, she couldn't determine where the signal was coming from.
Oh my god. How fucking scary.
Yeah. And there's a theory that her RDF equipment did not work at the 7500 kilohertz because, like most equipment at that time, were not designed to work above 2000 kilohertz. So,
Um, that seems like something you should.
well, yeah, there are some sources that say like she just didn't understand her direction finding system. Like, it was fitted to the aircraft prior to like the journey to go, because since it was a different aircraft.
This is why I said she rushed it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, and like it hadn't been as important in the other legs of the journey.
Right, because it
So,
didn't matter. Wow.
yeah. But the Itasca received calls from Earhart at 2:45 and also at 5 a.m. on July 2nd with routine like weather reports. But she was unable to hear back from the ship. And at 6:14, another call was received stating the aircraft was within 200 miles, and she requested the ship use its direction finder to provide a bearing for her aircraft. And it was at this point that the radio operators on the Itasca realized their RDF system could not tune into the aircraft's 3105 kilohertz frequency.
Again, no one thought that would be something you'd want to check.
Right. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know who chose these frequencies either.
Right.
But yeah, at 6:45, she's again asked for a bearing and estimated they were 100 miles out, but there was nothing the ship could do to get her plane to home in on them at this point. Yeah,
That would be so scary.
I
Especially if she
know.
didn't really know what the problem was until this point.
Yeah, right. And then what do you do? Like,
Right.
yeah, at 7:30, an Itasca radio log stated Earhart on Northwest running out of gas, only half hour left, can't hear us at all. We hear her and are sending on 3105 same time constantly. So they were trying to send this out to her, but she could not hear them.
God, that's. Uh.
Yeah. And then at 7:42, there was another radio log which said Earhart's plane calling Itasca. And she said, "We must be on you but cannot see you, but gas is running low, been unable to reach you by radio. We are flying at 1,000 feet." So she's flying super low too to try and see them.
No, there's nothing out there. Like, it's so desolate
Right. And this island, like, it's totally flat too. So, like, you can't really tell at that height.
until you're, like, over it. Not even. Oh, gosh.
Right. And at 7:58, she said again she could not hear the Itasca and asked them to send voice signals so she could try to take a radio bearing. And this was reported by the Itasca as the loudest possible signal that they received, which indicated Earhart and Noonan were in the immediate area. But they couldn't send a voice at the frequency she asked, so they sent a Morse code instead, which she acknowledged receiving, but she was unable to determine their direction still.
Um, did Noonan know Morse code? I mean, I assume they couldn't talk to her through Morse code if they.
I don't know how the Morse code sent through, but their voice didn't send through. But
Oh.
like I think it wasn't to communicate, it was just for her to try and find a direction still. So
Yeah.
like it didn't really
Well,
matter what it said.
they could have given coordinates. I guess she didn't have a way to read coordinates, right?
Right. He was trying to coordinate with like the sky, the celestial navigation,
Yeah.
but because this island's like so tiny, if he's off a little bit, then they could just fly right over it without seeing it. Like they could
Uh,
be off by like 5 or 10 miles and just never
well,
see
and
it.
like, yeah, that's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm scared for them.
I know. But her last known transmission was at 8:43 where she said, "We are on the line 157 337. We will repeat this message. We will repeat this on 6210 kilocycles. Wait." Which I don't know why she said wait. But like they think the 157 337 are coordinates like the line that they're following.
Oh.
Um, which, like, this transmission seems to indicate she and Noonan believed they had reached Howland's charted position, which was incorrect by about 5 nautical miles.
But a nautical mile's less than a mile.
Yeah.
So you would think that you would at least be able to see it. I guess depends on cloud cover.
Yeah, so the Itasca used its boilers, like, during this too to generate smoke, but, like, they couldn't see it, and there were a lot of scattered clouds in the area, causing dark shadows on the ocean surface, which may have been indistinguishable from the island's flat profile. So, like, they tried to do the visual when she was, like, saying, "We must be right over you," and all this stuff, but because of the clouds and the shadows, they couldn't see it still. After this last transmission at 8:43, attempts were made to reach them via voice and Morse code, but all were unsuccessful, and obviously they never arrived to Howland Island. So, after an hour from the last message, the Itasca searched north and west, and the US Navy joined the search, and they looked for 3 days, and they found nothing. And then after 4 days, the captain of the battleship Colorado was ordered from the commandant to take over all naval and coast guard units to coordinate search efforts. And they searched the Phoenix Islands, south of Howland Island, and also searched Gardner Island. And they believe she could have landed her plane in the lagoon at Gardner Island and then swam ashore. And they also said they saw signs of recent habitation there, but they didn't see any people or any like wreckage or anything. So eventually they had to call up the search on July 19th, which there was some public backlash, I guess, because this was like the most expensive search and rescue in history at that point.
Oh, and they're like, why are we looking?
Yeah,
Same as what we said about the billionaires and the submarines.
right. At least she's American though, and it's Americans looking for her,
Right.
but yeah, they kind of had to call it off after they literally found no pieces of anything. So it's like what do you do after that? You just have to stop, I guess.
This is stressing me out so much.
Yeah. But her husband, Putnam, financed private search by local authorities like immediately after the Coast Guard and Navy called off their search. So he didn't give up for a while, I guess. But he searched Pacific Islands and waters, concentrating on the Gilberts. And he also directed searches on the Phoenix Islands, Christmas Island, Fanning Island, and the Marshall Islands, but still never found any trace of the plane, and they were never found. And also, Putnam requested to become the trustee of Earhart's estate to finance these searches and requested to have a declared death in absentia, which was waiving a 7-year period, which this was granted by the court in Los Angeles. And as a result, Amelia Earhart was declared legally dead on January 5th, 1939, and she was 41.
If they had found her, that would have been such a headache to try to get her undead.
Yeah,
Like, aren't
right.
there people who accidentally get called dead and it's like impossible to get them undead?
Yes. Yeah, and
Like,
they're
that's a
not.
thing.
That is a thing. I mean, they never found her, so I guess that's not a problem, but
Right.
that would have been, yeah.
Oh, I would be pissed if they did that to me.
But at that point, it was like a year and a half later.
Yeah. Like, they were looking for wreckage, not.
Yeah. So, but he did become the trustee in her estate. But like he used it to search for her for another like year and a half. So like I don't know if he would have set it up or anything.
Right.
But yeah, now we can get into theories, I guess. The first theory they called the crash and sink theory, which is what it sounds like. That she just crashed, ran out of fuel, crashed in the ocean, and then died there. And most historians think this is what happened. The plane carried enough fuel to reach Howland with some extra to spare for like some contingencies, but would not have been enough for how long they were searching for Howland. So most likely she just fell out of the sky.
Oh.
Yeah. And during the 1970s, retired US Navy Captain Lawrence Safford analyzed the flight and like the logs and everything, and he concluded the flight suffered from poor planning, worse execution.
I mean, after hearing these details,
Yeah.
I don't disagree.
Yeah, I think if she could have waited and
Yeah, I
learned
think she
more.
rushed it.
Yeah.
Also, why is it both times she's trying to get to Howland Island it doesn't work?
I
Like,
know.
that's the
Right.
sketch part. I
Yeah.
mean, that's not the only sketch part, but to me
It is
that's
weird.
wild.
Right. Every time it failed. I mean, at least the first time they didn't even leave Hawaii,
Right.
but
Or maybe
yeah.
she should have picked a different island.
Yeah. I mean, there are other islands,
There are a lot.
but I think this one is the flattest one.
But she could have gotten a lot more west.
Yeah.
I mean, it would have been south of the equator, but it was a lot more west. Like, there's all, like, Fiji and all of that you could get to and then go north to Hawaii.
Oh. Yeah, it is a little questioning why she kept that route, but I mean, I would say she didn't really. I mean, they say how big it is and stuff, but you don't really think how tiny of an island in the middle of the ocean it is when
Right.
you're planning it, but
And, like, I guess if her plane crashed in the water, like, think about how hard it was to find that submarine, and really they had, like, so much technology
yeah.
trying to find it.
Right. Yeah, you would never find it if it just went in the. I mean, it took forever to find that Malaysia flight too, right? Or was that
Right.
ever found? I don't know.
I think it might have been a little
I thought
bit,
it
maybe.
was, but like, and then like the currents and everything it always goes a direction that you don't even think it'll go.
Right.
So it's like, oh, this wreckage, maybe it went south, but it really went like north somehow or something. I don't know. But yeah, probably this is what. Well, we'll talk about the other theories. The second theory is the Japanese capture theory, which I don't know if you've heard of this before. I feel like that I've heard this a lot.
Yeah.
But yeah, states that somehow they navigated to the Japanese South Seas Mandate and crash landed on the island of Saipan, which if you look at the the map that I have like before that, like Saipan like north.
Oh.
Like they were not going straight
Whoa,
north
like
from.
opposite direction,
Yeah, like
literally.
there's no way she would have gone that way. I don't know. I find that hard to believe. But it says like they were captured and executed by Japanese forces if they had landed on Saipan.
That's just anti-Japanese
That's what
propaganda.
I was
Probably came up
thinking.
during World War II.
Yeah, that is what I was thinking. Because, yeah, it's more than 2,700 miles away from Howland Island. It's like directly north of where she took off.
Almost north west. Like it's yeah.
Saipan
Yeah.
from New Guinea.
It's on this picture. Like if you go straight, like it is
Well,
technically